The radio crackled to life at 3:47 hours, cutting through the pre-dawn silence that blanketed Fob Viper like a funeral shroud. Staff Sergeant Marcus Bulldog Rodriguez jerked awake in his cot, muscle memory already reaching for his rifle before his brain processed the transmission. The voice that emerged from the comms unit wasn't the gruff bark of their usual close air support coordinator. It was different, smoother, unmistakably female. Viper Base, this is Reaper 7-1 requesting immediate CAS authorization for grid November 7-4 Alpha. We have eyes on 12 tangos moving through the valley, approximately 2 clicks from your position. Rodriguez exchanged glances with his team leader, Chief Petty Officer Jake Saber Williams, whose weathered face had gone pale in the green glow of the radio display. That voice. They both knew that voice, though neither dared speak the name aloud. It belonged to someone who shouldn't exist anymore, someone whose existence had been officially erased from every military database 3 years ago. The transmission continued with clinical precision, requesting danger close gun runs on marked positions. Weather is clear, visibility unlimited, ready to authenticate. Williams grabbed the handset with trembling fingers. His team of Navy SEALs had been operating in this godforsaken corner of Afghanistan for 6 weeks, hunting high-value targets and painting laser designators for surgical strikes. They'd worked with dozens of pilots, but none had ever made his blood run cold like this. Reaper 7-1, Viper Base, state your actual identity for authentication. A pause. In that silence, the desert wind whistled through the gaps in their compound's hastily erected barriers, carrying with it the scent of cordite and dust that had become the perfume of their war. Rodriguez watched his chief's knuckles turn white around the radio handset. Viper Base, Reaper 7-1, call sign is Phoenix, authentication Charlie Lima 779er, how copy? The handset slipped from Williams' grip, clattering against the wooden table. Phoenix, the ghost pilot, the woman who'd been court-martialed, stripped of rank, and supposedly imprisoned for insubordination after refusing a direct order that would have leveled a village full of civilians. The pilot whose final transmission, 3 years ago, had been a middle finger to the Pentagon broadcast on an open channel before she vanished into thin air. Rodriguez caught the handset before it hit the ground. Around them, the other members of their 8-man team were stirring, sensing the electricity in the air. Something monumental was happening, something that would either save their lives or damn their souls. Above them, the sound of turbofan engines cut through the mountain air, growing louder with each passing second. The dead don't fly, but Phoenix was circling overhead and she was very much alive. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's hands shook as he raised the handset to his lips, knowing that whatever words came next would change everything. The desert held its breath, waiting for his response to a ghost who commanded the sky with the fury of her namesake, risen from the ashes of her own destruction. The engines grew louder. Phoenix was coming home. Williams stared at the radio display, watching the green digits flicker in the darkness of their operations tent. 3 years ago, Major Elena Phoenix Vasquez had been the most decorated female combat pilot in the Air Force, a legend whispered about in ready rooms from Bagram to Baghdad. Her F-16 had been an extension of her will, a $20 million weapon system that danced through enemy fire like smoke through fingers. Then came the Kandahar incident, the order to level a compound that intelligence swore was empty despite Phoenix's visual confirmation of children playing in the courtyard. She'd refused 3 times. The final transmission had been seared into military folklore. Negative, control. I don't murder bobbies for your fucking oil contracts. The court-martial had been swift and merciless. Insubordination, failure to follow lawful orders, conduct unbecoming. She'd been sentenced to 10 years in military prison, her wings stripped, her name erased from the honor rolls. Except Elena Vasquez had never made it to prison. The transport carrying her had crashed in the Hindu Kush, all aboard presumed dead. Now she was here, orbiting their position in what sounded like an A-10 Thunderbolt, that twin-engine titan of close air support that could turn enemy positions into smoking craters with surgical precision. Viper Base, Phoenix. I'm showing thermal signatures moving toward your perimeter. You've got company coming and they're not bringing flowers. Rodriguez looked through the night vision scope mounted on their defensive position. Sure enough, heat signatures were moving through the valley, at least 15 fighters with what appeared to be heavy weapons. Their extraction wasn't due for another 18 hours, and their long-range communications had been jammed for the past 6 hours. Phoenix Viper Base, how are you even here? A sound that might have been laughter crackled through the radio. That's a long story, Sergeant. Right now, you need to worry about the RPG team setting up on the ridge to your northeast. I can see their launcher from up here. Williams grabbed the handset. Phoenix, this is Chief Williams. If you're really who we think you are, we need proof. Jake Williams, graduated Bud S Class 247. Your wife Sarah makes that terrible meatloaf you pretend to love, and you've got a tattoo of a shark on your left shoulder that you tell people you got in Thailand but actually got drunk in Tijuana during leave. The silence in the tent was deafening. Only someone with access to the most classified personnel files would know those details, or someone who had shared drinks and war stories in forgotten corners of the world. Hal, Williams whispered. Some of us don't die when they're supposed to, Chief. Now, do you want close air support, or do you want to explain to your team's families why you chose pride over survival? The sound of the A-10's GAU-8 cannon spinning up echoed across the valley like the growl of an ancient dragon preparing to breathe fire. Rodriguez felt the ground vibrate beneath his boots as Phoenix's aircraft made its first pass over the enemy positions. The distinctive whine of the A-10's engines mixed with the earth-shaking BRRRT of its 30mm cannon, a sound that had become the symphony of salvation for countless ground troops over the decades. Guns, 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 Phoenix's voice came through the radio with professional calm, though Rodriguez could hear something else underneath, a kind of fierce joy that belonged to predators in their element. Direct hit on the RPG team. Secondary explosions confirm weapons cache. The night sky erupted in orange flowers of destruction, each blast illuminating the valley in stark relief. Rodriguez watched through his scope as enemy fighters scattered like insects under a lifted rock, their coordinated advance dissolving into panicked flight. Phoenix Viper Base. That's a confirmed kill on the RPG position. We count at least 8 tangos down. Copy, Viper Base. I'm coming around for another pass, marking targets with infrared strobes for your reference. Williams pressed his eye to the thermal scope, watching the ghostly white figures of enemy combatants moving through the maze of rocks and ravines that surrounded their forward operating base. They'd been hunting his team for weeks, growing bolder as coalition forces pulled back from remote outposts. Phoenix, Williams called into the handset. How did you know we were here? This position isn't on any official logs. A pause. When Phoenix spoke again, her voice carried a weight that seemed to press down on the entire valley. Some of us never stopped fighting the war, Chief. We just stopped taking orders from people who have never bled for the dirt they're trading away. The A-10 screamed overhead again, so low that Rodriguez could see the shark-tooth nose art painted on its titanium bathtub of a cockpit. But there was something else painted there too, a phoenix rising from flames, wings spread wide, talons extended. Below it, barely visible in the moonlight, were kill marks. Lots of kill marks. Jesus Christ, whispered Petty Officer Danny Scope Morrison, the team's sniper. That's not a standard Air Force bird. Look at the modifications. Rodriguez followed Morrison's pointing finger. The A-10 banking overhead had been extensively modified, additional armor plating, non-standard missile pylons, and what looked like electronic warfare pods that definitely weren't part of the original configuration. Phoenix, where did you get that aircraft? Let's just say some of us have friends in the defense contractor business who believe in keeping the right people in the air. Her voice carried a hint of dark humor. Besides, someone's got to keep an eye on our boys when Washington decides you're expendable. Another pass, another devastating burst of cannon fire. The enemy formation was breaking apart, but Rodriguez could see more heat signatures moving in from the east. The radio crackled with Phoenix's transmission. "Viper Base, you've got reinforcements coming. About 30 more tangos moving in 3 groups. I can keep them busy, but I'm going to need your laser designator to mark targets for precision strikes." Williams looked at his men, seeing his own thoughts reflected in their faces. They were off the books, operating in a region their own command had written off. No official support, no extraction timeline, no backup plan. Just 8 SEALs and a ghost pilot who'd risen from the dead to save their lives. The laser designator hummed to life in Rodriguez's hands, its infrared beam invisible to the naked eye but bright as a beacon to Phoenix's targeting systems. Above them, the A-10 began another attack run, and for the first time in weeks, Rodriguez allowed himself to believe they might see sunrise. The dawn came painted in cordite and smoke, the horizon line blurred by the heat shimmer of burning vehicles and scattered ammunition. Phoenix had been airborne for over 4 hours, turning the valley into a graveyard of twisted metal and silence. Rodriguez watched her A-10 circle overhead, its engines quieter now, almost contemplative. "Viper Base, Phoenix, I'm showing all clear on thermal. No movement, no heat signatures. Looks like the party's over." Williams slumped against the sandbags, exhaustion finally hitting him like a physical blow. His team had expended nearly all their ammunition, and 3 of his men bore wounds from enemy fire that had gotten too close for comfort. Without Phoenix, they would have been overrun before the sun cleared the mountains. "Phoenix, Viper Base, we owe you our lives. Where do we even begin to thank you?" "You don't." Her voice had changed, becoming softer, more vulnerable. "You just remember that some of us still believe in protecting the people who can't protect themselves." Petty Officer Morrison, his sniper rifle cradled across his lap, looked up at the circling aircraft. "Phoenix, if you don't mind me asking, what happened to you? After the court-martial, after the crash, everyone said you were dead." A long pause. The A-10's engine seemed to sigh as Phoenix banked into another lazy circle above their position. "Maybe I was for a while. Maybe I needed to die to become what I am now." Her voice carried across the radio waves like a confession whispered in a cathedral. The Elena Vasquez who followed orders and trusted the system. She died in that transport crash. What crawled out of the wreckage was something else. Rodriguez found himself leaning forward, drawn into the story despite himself. What happened out there? "The crash wasn't an accident. Someone wanted to make sure I never made it to prison, never had a chance to tell my story to the media. But the thing about Phoenixes," the radio crackled with what might have been laughter or might have been sobbing, "we don't burn easy." Williams closed his eyes, feeling the weight of secrets that could reshape everything he thought he knew about their war. Who? Who wanted you dead? The same people who sent you out here without support. The same people who write off entire villages as acceptable losses. The same people who measure victory in profit margins instead of lives saved. The A-10 descended slightly, its shadow passing over their position like a protective wing. Rodriguez could see the pilot now, a silhouette behind the aircraft's thick canopy glass, and for a moment he imagined he could see her face, determined, haunted, transformed by whatever crucible had forged her into this avenging angel. "I spent 2 years learning to be invisible, learning to fly aircraft that don't officially exist, funded by people who believe the war should be fought for the right reasons. And now I hunt the hunters, protect the protectors, and make sure that good people don't die for bad reasons." The radio fell silent except for the steady thrum of turbofan engines. Below them, The valley stretched away into infinity, marked now by the scars of their desperate battle. Phoenix's voice returned, quieter now, almost intimate. "Your extraction isn't coming, is it?" Williams met Rodriguez's eyes, seeing his own certainty reflected there. "No, we've been dark for too long. Command probably thinks we're already dead." "Then it's a good thing. Dead people can still fly." The sound of approaching rotors echoed off the valley walls, growing louder with each passing second. Rodriguez grabbed his binoculars and scanned the horizon, spotting two Black Hawks flying in tight formation, unmarked and moving with the purposeful speed of a rescue mission. "Phoenix, did you?" "Some of us never stop taking care of our own Viper base. Those birds will have you back to friendly territory in 2 hours. Medical personnel on board, hot meals, and clean sheets waiting at the other end." Williams stared at the approaching helicopters, then up at the circling. "Why? Why risk everything for 8 SEALs you've never met?" The radio crackled with static before Phoenix's answer came through, clear and strong. "Because 3 years ago, I learned that the only orders worth following are the ones written on your heart, and my heart says that good people shouldn't die alone in forgotten places." The Black Hawks were settling into landing patterns now, their rotor wash kicking up clouds of dust and debris. Rodriguez gathered his gear, but his eyes remained fixed on the A-10 overhead. "Phoenix, will we see you again?" "Probably not. Ghosts have a way of disappearing when the sun gets too bright." A pause. "But if you ever find yourselves in a place like this again, if you ever need someone to watch over you when the world looks away, just remember that some angels wear flight suits instead of wings." The first Black Hawk touched down, its crew chief already moving to help load the wounded. Rodriguez ran toward the aircraft, but he couldn't resist one last look at the sky. The A-10 was climbing now, its engines growing fainter as it headed toward the rising sun. Williams grabbed Rodriguez's arm as they reached the helicopter. "What do we tell them? About Phoenix, about what happened here?" Rodriguez looked back at the valley, already beginning to shimmer in the heat of the climbing sun. The evidence of their battle was scattered across miles of terrain, but there would be no official report, no record of the ghost pilot who had saved their lives. "We tell them the truth," Rodriguez said, shouting over the rotor noise. "We tell them that sometimes when everything goes to hell and the world turns its back on you, angels fall out of the sky to carry you home." As the Black Hawk lifted off, Rodriguez pressed his face to the window, searching the sky for any sign of Phoenix's A-10. But she was gone, vanished into the endless blue like smoke on the wind. Only the radio crackled one last time, faint and distant. "Fly safe, Viper Base, and remember, the dead don't give up their secrets easily." The helicopter banked toward friendly territory, carrying 8 living SEALs and the ghost of a story that would never appear in any official files. Behind them, the valley fell silent once more, keeping its secrets buried beneath the sand and stone of a war that had forgotten how to end. But somewhere in the vast sky above Afghanistan, a phoenix continued to soar, watching over those who had been abandoned by the world, carrying the fire of justice in her heart and the thunder of retribution beneath her wings. The debriefing took place in a windowless room at Bagram Airfield, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry wasps. Colonel James "Hawk" Patterson sat across from Williams and Rodriguez, his weathered face unreadable as he reviewed their after-action report for the 3rd time. "Let me get this straight," Patterson said, setting down the file with deliberate care. "You're telling me that an unidentified A-10 pilot provided close air support for your operation, eliminated approximately 40 enemy combatants, and then arranged for your extraction using unmarked helicopters?" Williams kept his expression neutral. "That's correct, sir." "And this pilot identified herself as Phoenix?" "Yes, sir." Patterson leaned back in his chair, studying the two SEALs with the intensity of a man who'd spent 30 years learning to read the truth between the lines. Gentlemen, Phoenix died 3 years ago in a transport crash. Major Elena Vasquez was declared killed in action, along with her military police escort. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Sir, with respect, we know what we heard. We know what we saw. What you saw, Patterson said slowly, was an A-10 Thunderbolt providing close air support. What you heard was a pilot who knew operational details that shouldn't be accessible to anyone outside classified channels. He stood up, packing to the small window that offered a view of the airfield's endless runway. What you experienced was a black operation so far off the books that acknowledging its existence would require me to have this conversation with people who make colonels disappear. The room fell silent except for the distant roar of aircraft taking off and landing. Williams watched Patterson's reflection in the window, seeing the conflict playing out across the older man's features. Sir, Williams said carefully, are you telling us to forget what happened out there? Patterson turned around, his eyes hard as flint. I'm telling you that officially, you were extracted by a routine search and rescue operation after your communications equipment malfunctioned. The enemy casualties in the valley were the result of drone strikes coordinated through standard channels. And unofficially, Rodriguez asked. Unofficially, I've been fighting this war for 15 years, and I've learned that sometimes the system produces its own antibodies. Patterson returned to his chair, leaning forward conspiratorially. Sometimes, when the bureaucrats and politicians get too far removed from the reality on the ground, the warriors find their own way to take care of each other. Williams felt a chill run down his spine. You know about Phoenix. I know that 3 years ago, a decorated pilot refused an order that would have killed civilians. I know that her transport supposedly crashed in a region where recovery operations were deemed too dangerous to attempt. And I know that ever since then, American forces operating in remote areas have been reporting miraculous interventions by unidentified aircraft. Patterson pulled out a different file, this one marked with classification stamps that made Rodriguez's eyes widen. 17 separate incidents over the past 2 years. Special operations teams cut off from support, suddenly receiving close air support from aircraft that don't appear on any flight logs. Taliban commanders eliminated by precision strikes that can't be traced to any official mission. Someone's been keeping score, Williams observed. Someone's been keeping our people alive. Patterson closed the file. The question is whether that someone is a rogue operator or a necessary evil. Rodriguez found his voice. What do you think, sir? Patterson was quiet for a long moment, staring at the classification stamps on the file folder. I think that sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same thing. I think that in a war where politicians treat soldiers like pawns on a chess board, maybe we need a few pieces that don't follow the rules. And if someone asks us directly about Phoenix, then you tell them the truth as you understand it. A pilot provided close air support when you needed it most. Everything else is speculation and fairy tale-ese. Patterson stood up, signaling the end of the debriefing. But gentlemen, if you ever find yourselves in a similar situation, and if Phoenix should happen to appear again, you make sure she knows that there are people in the system who understand what she's doing, even if we can't officially support it. Williams and Rodriguez exchanged glances. Understood, sir. As they reached the door, Patterson called out one last time. And if anyone asks you whether the dead can fly, you tell them that in this war, anything is possible. Outside the debriefing room, Rodriguez grabbed Williams' arm. Chief, what the hell was that about? Williams looked around, making sure they were alone in the corridor. That was a colonel telling us that Phoenix isn't just some rogue pilot. She's part of something bigger, something that exists in the spaces between the official story and the truth. They walked in silence toward the barracks, passing groups of soldiers preparing for deployment, returning from missions, or simply trying to survive another day in a war that seemed to have no beginning and no end. "You think we'll see her again?" Rodriguez asked. Williams looked up at the sky, watching a formation of F-16s banking toward the horizon. "I think that somewhere out there, Phoenix is watching over people like us. And as long as politicians keep sending good people to die for bad reasons, she'll keep falling out of the sky to even the odds." The sound of jet engines faded into the distance, leaving behind only the endless wind and the weight of secrets that could never be spoken aloud. 6 months later, Rodriguez found himself back in the mountains, leading a different team on a different mission that had gone sideways in all the familiar ways. Intelligence had been wrong, support had been delayed, and enemy forces had them pinned down in a valley that looked disturbingly similar to the place where they'd first encountered Phoenix. This time it was Delta Force, 8 operators from the most elite unit in the American military, trapped behind enemy lines with ammunition running low and hope running lower. Rodriguez had volunteered for the assignment, partly because he was the best man for the job, partly because something deep in his gut told him this was where he needed to be. "Blackwater Base, this is Titan 6. We need immediate extraction or close air support. 40-plus tangos converging on our position, and we're running out of party favors." The radio crackled with static and bad news. "Titan 6, Blackwater Base. No assets available for immediate support. Nearest friendly aircraft is 90 minutes out." Rodriguez looked at his team leader, Master Sergeant Frank Diesel Morrison, Danny Morrison's older brother, carrying the same steady competence and dry humor that had made his sibling legendary among Spec Ops snipers. 90 minutes, Diesel muttered, checking his ammunition count. "Might as well be 90 years. That's when they heard it, the distant whine of turbofan engines, growing closer with each passing second. Rodriguez felt his heart rate spike, a mixture of hope and disbelief coursing through his veins. "Blackwater Base, this is Reaper 7-1 requesting immediate CAS authorization for grid Oscar 92 Charlie. I have eyes on multiple tangos converging on friendly position." The voice was unmistakable. Phoenix had found them again. Diesel grabbed the handset. "Reaper 7-1, this is Titan 6. Authenticate your identity." "Titan 6 Phoenix. Your brother Danny says to tell you that you still owe him $50 from that poker game in Kandahar, and that Sarah's meatloaf has improved since she started following actual recipes." Rodriguez watched Diesel's face go through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, and finally something approaching awe. "Holy shit, you're real. Real enough to keep you breathing, Diesel. Now, where do you need the hurt put down?" The A-10 screamed overhead, flying so low that Rodriguez could read the kill marks painted beneath the cockpit. There were more of them now, a lot more, stretching along the fuselage like a deadly tally of justice served. "Phoenix, we've got RPG teams on the ridgeline to our north, machine gun nests on the eastern approach, and what looks like a mortar team setting up about 800 meters southwest." "Copy all, Titan 6. Painting targets now. Keep your heads down." The first gun run was a thing of brutal beauty, the GAU-8 cannon tearing through enemy positions with surgical precision. Secondary explosions lit up the mountainside as ammunition caches and fuel stores caught fire, turning the night into a hellscape of orange and red. "Direct hits on the ridgeline," Rodriguez called into the radio. "RPG teams neutralized." "Roger, coming around for the machine gun nests. Mark them with your laser if you've got it." Rodriguez activated the designator, painting the eastern approach with an infrared beam that would guide Phoenix's missiles to their targets. The A-10 banked into its attack run, and moments later the night erupted in a series of precisely placed explosions that silenced the enemy's automatic weapons. "Phoenix," Diesel called over the radio, "how did you know we were here? This operation is blacker than black." A pause. When Phoenix's voice returned, it carried a weight of knowledge that made Rodriguez's skin crawl. Some of us have learned to read the signs. Diesel. When good soldiers get sent to bad places with no support and no backup plan, it usually means someone wants them to disappear quietly. You're saying this was a setup. I'm saying that in 15 years of war, I've learned to recognize the smell of betrayal. And right now, this whole valley stinks of it. The mortar team chose that moment to open fire, their rounds bracketing the Delta team's position with increasing accuracy. Rodriguez felt shrapnel sing past his helmet as he pressed himself deeper into the rocky outcropping that provided their only cover. Phoenix, we need that mortar team eliminated now. Working on it, Titan 6, but I'm going to need you to do something for me first. Name it. I need you to document everything that happens here tonight. Record coordinates, enemy positions, the complete tactical situation. Because when you get back to base, people are going to ask questions, and some of those people aren't going to like the answers. Rodriguez understood. Phoenix wasn't just saving their lives, she was exposing the rot that had sent them here to die. Copy that, Phoenix, recording everything. The A-10 dove toward the mortar position, its cannon spitting fire and death. The enemy team disappeared in a cloud of smoke and debris, their weapons scattered across the mountainside like twisted sculpture. All targets neutralized, Phoenix reported. You're clear to move to extraction point Bravo. But as the Delta team gathered their equipment and prepared to move, Rodriguez realized that Phoenix wasn't finished. Her continued to circle overhead, its engines humming with barely contained violence. Phoenix, we're ready to move. What's your status? My status is that I'm about to go hunting, Titan 6. There are people who sent you here to die, and they need to understand that some debts get paid in full. The radio went silent, and Rodriguez watched Phoenix's aircraft climb toward the stars, heading west toward the rear areas where commanders made decisions from the safety of their air-conditioned bunkers. Justice, it seemed, was about to pay a house call. The extraction point sat in a bowl-shaped valley 3 kilometers from their original position, marked by infrared strobes that painted the landscape in ghostly green through their night vision equipment. Rodriguez led the Delta team through the rocky terrain, every shadow a potential threat, every sound a possible ambush. But the mountains remained silent except for the distant echo of explosions from the west, where Phoenix had disappeared into the night on her mission of retribution. Whatever she was doing back there, it involved a lot of fire and a great deal of righteous anger. Titan 6, this is Eagle 17. We have you on approach to extraction point Bravo, 2 minutes out. The Black Hawks appeared like dark angels against the star-filled sky, their rotor wash kicking up clouds of dust and debris as they settled into landing positions. Rodriguez counted his team as they boarded, all 8 operators accounted for, wounded but alive, carrying with them the documentation that Phoenix had requested. As the helicopters lifted off, Rodriguez found himself scanning the horizon for any sign of the A-10. But Phoenix had vanished into the vastness of the Afghan night, hunting prey that had no idea death was stalking them from above. The flight back to base took 45 minutes, 45 minutes of blessed silence broken only by the steady thrum of rotor blades and the occasional radio check from their pilots. Rodriguez used the time to organize his thoughts, to prepare for the questions that would come, to steel himself for the truth he would have to tell. The landing pad at Forward Operating Base Chapman was flooded with light, medical personnel standing by to receive casualties that, thanks to Phoenix, were far fewer than they might have been. As Rodriguez climbed out of the helicopter, he saw a familiar figure waiting by the landing zone. Colonel Patterson stood in the wash of the rotor blades, his uniform crisp despite the late hour, his expression unreadable in the harsh, artificial light. He waited until the helicopters had powered down and the medical teams had cleared the wounded before approaching Rodriguez and Diesel. Gentlemen, Patterson said without preamble, I need to know everything, and I mean everything. They walked to the same windowless briefing room where Rodriguez had been debriefed 6 months earlier, but this time the atmosphere was different, more urgent, more dangerous. Sir, Rodriguez began, before we start, you need to know that Phoenix specifically asked us to document everything. She wanted this on the record. Patterson's eyes sharpened. Show me. Rodriguez produced his tactical camera and the digital recorder he'd used to log grid coordinates and tactical observations. The evidence was all there: enemy positions, timestamps, radio communications, everything needed to piece together the complete picture of their mission. The intelligence was wrong, Diesel said bluntly. We were told we were hunting a single high-value target in a lightly defended compound. Instead, we walked into a battalion-strength ambush in terrain that was perfectly suited for our destruction. Patterson studied the tactical recordings, his face growing darker with each piece of evidence. Someone wanted you dead. The question is who? Phoenix seemed to think she knew, Rodriguez said. She went hunting after she extracted us. As if summoned by their conversation, Patterson's radio crackled to life. Colonel Patterson, this is base operations. We're receiving reports of explosions at FOB Resolute. Initial reports indicate that the command bunker has been destroyed by precision airstrikes. Patterson grabbed the handset. Casualties. Unknown at this time, sir. But Colonel Marcus Webb was confirmed to be in the bunker when it was hit. The name hit Rodriguez like a physical blow. Colonel Webb had been their mission commander, the man who had briefed them personally and assured them that intelligence was solid, support was guaranteed, and extraction was confirmed. Patterson set down the handset, his expression grim. Gentlemen, it appears that Phoenix has just eliminated the man who sent you to die. The room fell silent. Rodriguez felt a chill run down his spine as the implication sank in. Phoenix wasn't just a rogue pilot providing close air support. She was judge, jury, and executioner for those who betrayed their own soldiers. Sir, Diesel said quietly, what happens now? Patterson looked at the evidence spread across the table, then at the two operators who had lived to tell the tale of their betrayal and salvation. Now, we decide whether we're going to let justice be served by angels, or whether we're going to pretend that good soldiers died for good reasons. He reached for his secure phone, the one connected directly to Pentagon leadership. But first, I think it's time for some people in Washington to learn that Phoenix is real, she's angry, and she's not going away. Rodriguez watched Patterson dial, knowing that this conversation would change everything. The secret war was about to become very public, and Phoenix was about to become either a hero or a most wanted terrorist, depending on which side of the truth you stood on. In the distance, the sound of jet engines echoed across the base as another aircraft took off into the night. Rodriguez wondered if it was Phoenix, heading toward her next target, carrying justice on wings of fire. The call to Washington lasted 3 hours. Rodriguez and Diesel waited in the corridor outside Patterson's office, listening to the muffled sounds of a career being destroyed one carefully chosen word at a time. Through the thin walls, they could hear Patterson's voice rising and falling, sometimes pleading, sometimes demanding, always controlled. When the door finally opened, Patterson looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 hours. His uniform was rumpled, his face drawn with exhaustion, and his eyes held the hollow look of a man who'd seen too much truth for one lifetime. "Gentlemen, we have a problem," he said, gesturing them back into his office. "The Pentagon is very interested in Phoenix, very interested and very unhappy." Rodriguez felt his stomach drop. "Sir, there are people in Washington who see Phoenix as a threat to military discipline, a rogue operator who needs to be eliminated before she inspires others to similar acts of independence." Diesel leaned forward, "And there are others." There are others who see her as a necessary corrective to a system that has lost its way. People who understand that sometimes justice requires actions that can't be officially sanctioned. Patterson walked to his window, staring out at the airfield where aircraft took off and landed in the eternal rhythm of war. The problem is that Phoenix has made herself impossible to ignore. Colonel Webb's death has sent shockwaves through the command structure. Everyone is asking questions, and some of those questions have very uncomfortable answers. What kind of questions? Rodriguez asked. Questions about how many other operations have been compromised by commanders with outside interests. Questions about how many soldiers have been sacrificed to protect political careers or financial arrangements. Questions about whether the system is broken beyond repair. Patterson turned back to face them, his expression heavy with the weight of command decisions. Phoenix has started a war within the war, gentlemen, and now we have to choose sides. Rodriguez thought about the valley where Phoenix had saved their lives, about the precision with which she'd eliminated threats while preserving civilian life, about the careful way she documented evidence of their betrayal. Sir, respectfully, I think Phoenix chose her side a long time ago. She chose the side of the soldiers who bleed.